Hey, what's up, guys? Hope everyone is doing well today. Bitcoin taking a little bit of a breather here, a little bit of a pause. So I want to just do a quick market review, a quick update, as well as go over some trades that that we were looking at this week. Some names, lessons learned, good, bad. What could have done better, what went well, that sort of thing. It always helps to kind of review what's going on, uh, get an assessment, see how things are going. But thanks for being here. If you have any questions, I am pulling up the chat box now, so it's going to be a little bit open forum. If there's a chart you want to look at, my plan is to do a market update. I just posted a video, by the way, on YouTube. It's going to be a kind of a summary version of this, just kind of talking my thoughts on where I think things are going, just some of the pause. But obviously, this will be much more in depth, and so we'll take a look here. And so feel free to throw out chart names that you want to look at. Anything anything specific, we'll go from there. So real quick, let's do BTC here. Hey, how's it going, guys? Thanks for being here. All right, so looking at Bitcoin, yesterday we finally had that move higher, and it was just like imminent, right? It just I was kind of watching it all day. It was like, is it gonna happen already? Just do it already. And it was kind of nice to see, real time. It was, right towards the end of the trading day, which tends to happen a little bit. So that half hour before the last, that last hour or so before the end of the trading day, and then that first half hour afterwards, it's not unusual to see some market movement in and around that time period. And so that's when this one kicked off, and it was cool because, I mean, before, right, the chart looked like this, and then just kind of watching this candle happen real time, it's always nice to catch those like big green candles as they're growing. So good to see. I did get out a little early. I got out here near the highs. It was consolidating. This little last leg happened kind of overnight to my time, so wasn't able to jump on that. So I probably would have jumped in and out for a quick trade if I saw this breaking out. But it is starting to pull back a little bit. This is the very granular 30-minute chart. If you go to the 5-minute chart, you can see the bearish divergence starting to show up here. The RSI is kind of waning a little bit. On the 1-hour chart, it is still holding the 10 EMA, but I'm personally expecting a little bit of pullback right now on BTC here. I'm not sure why this is showing Polo, sorry. But here's the 4-hour chart. You can see here the 10 EMA is still way back here at 6,900. And so even a pullback down to this zone would still not be a bad thing, right? So just something to keep in mind. Below that, obviously, this breakout point is kind of now like the must-hold level, this 6,800 or so, maybe a little bit lower. You can give it some room down to about 6,750 or so. But, I mean, if it fully retraces and breaks out below that, then I think the move is done. It's kind of a failed breakout. So the big question is always, is this a bounce or is this a start of a new move higher, right? And so let's take a quick look at what I'm looking at here from that perspective. I'm going to just kind of clear all this. Let me clear the volume, and then we'll take a quick look back. So first off, just kind of doing a quick fib analysis from this most recent impulse leg that went down basically to this wick. You can see we've bounced right to the 50% retracement zone, which was just shy of 7,100. If that continues higher, then the next zone to be watching is the 618, which is around 73, 74 on this chart. And that lines up pretty well with this little bit of a resistance cluster that we have here, this little last base that formed. So that's if it continues higher. On the daily chart, the RSI absolutely has room to run if it wants to. RSI is just barely hitting 57, 60 or so. And so it has room to go up if it needs to from that perspective. But we are at the 50% retracement zone, so that's something to keep an eye on here, as well as, let me zoom in a little bit here, as well as this little bit of a resistance zone that I was watching back here, this 6,900 to 7,200. And you can see that is basically where we're at now. And lastly, there was that bear flag, potential bear flag that we're watching here as this thing channels up. And I'm going to do the kind of the tops. It's a little bit easier to see from that perspective. But if you go wick to wick there, just kind of, generally speaking, it's not an exact, and it's not a very clean bear flag, to be honest. So, take it with a grain of salt. But the fact that we're bumping into the top of that channel right now, this confluence of resistance. Best case scenario would be if it kind of just pauses here, maybe consolidates, sets up another bull flag or something, and then breaks higher. That'd be very nice to see. So definitely not writing it off, because the momentum is in favor of the bulls here. But the fact that we've had this strong move, the fact that it's kind of bounced right into this zone, that's the primary reason I was kind of taking some profits off the table there. Looking at some of the names that were kind of the stronger names, IOTA, for example, you can see that bounced right into the 618 on this retracement. And to be fair, I was scaling out here yesterday around 67 cents. So definitely missed the last little pump there, but on the hourlies, you can see it's starting to roll over here a little bit. You can see volume is starting to spike here near the highs. And so there's definitely some profit-taking signals showing up here. So just something to be mindful of. And a lot of the names that were strong, we'll quickly cycle through some of those, right? Ontology, broke out from that triangle, still looking pretty good here. But if you go to the 4-hour charts, RSI is kind of starting to get up here, and it's testing this. I don't want to call it double top, but it's basically testing this prior high resistance. So just something to keep an eye on there. When you see that, they tend to pause a little bit. Best case, again, would be like a little pause here and then a breakthrough higher, maybe even form a little cup and handle type of thing. But these moves have been strong for a couple of days now. I mean, Bitcoin was just very range bound, but so many of these alts, I mean, just over the last, not even week, it's really just been the last few days had that second leg higher after, we had that big push higher 2 weeks ago. And then it was just choppy consolidation, but it made for some nice setups. And you can see how tight Ontology got right in here. And it was just a matter of, hey, this thing's ready to go. And it took off. And so that was nice, but they have made pretty decent moves here. So just something to keep an eye on. BNB is one I just entered this morning here, mainly because I'm liking this setup here, and I'm very cautious in Bitcoin, of course. So keeping an eye on it from that perspective. But I'm liking this 4-hour consolidation that's starting to form. I preempted it a little bit on this little, it was just kind of vacillating back and forth here. So I jumped in with a half position. I'm going to keep a tight stop, though. It's tracking to this 10 EMA. If it starts to break below it, that's your first signal. The most I'll give it is this recent low around 1076, 1075. But on the upside, if it starts to clear above this 1130, then I'll be adding a little bit more to that. But what I'm looking for here is maybe just a quick pop to the upside. And it depends on how quickly it happens. If it just starts to grind slowly higher, I'll stay with it. Excuse me. Sorry, I should have turned the phone off there. But if it gives you a quick pop into this resistance, 3 to 6, 7%, in a couple of hours, I'll probably take partial profit at least, if not all, on some of that move, just because RSI here is also starting to push a little higher. So just got to be mindful that, we're a little bit long in the move already. It's not like you're buying a fresh pattern, a fresh breakout here. So, but the momentum is still to the upside. But, near term, just BTC is kind of the main thing to be watching. Ethereum is lagging. If I were bearish and I wanted to short something, Ethereum would be the name right now versus BTC, just because it's been the weaker name here so far. You're seeing, this big reversal bar in the last, several few hours. It looks like it wants to pull back a little bit more, but it's still technically forming higher highs in the near term. But you can see it didn't have quite as strong as a move as some of these other names. I mean, from the bottom here at 271, it went up 6-7%. I mean, that's definitely lagging compared to some of the others. If you look at ETH, BTC, definitely not a strong chart. Let me clear the volume there. Right. Now, the good news here is there is a bullish divergence starting to show up, but you want confirmation, right? Because if prices just roll over and continue lower, that'll pull this RSI down, and then it'll just kind of negate the divergence that's showing up. But right now, there is some bullish divergence coming off of this extreme oversold that it was a few weeks back. But until this thing breaks higher, you got to remain cautious. Now, it is forming a little bit of a falling wedge here as well. So if it breaks above this overhead trend line, that would start to signal, hey, maybe some more momentum is going to come into the alts. And in that scenario, I would continue to stick with the alts versus BTC. Now, BTC is definitely going to be the kind of the directional leader, right? If it starts to roll over significantly, then that's going to be a major headwind for the alts. And in that scenario, I probably wouldn't care too much if the alts are outperforming Bitcoin if all of them are dropping from a USD pair. So, but if Bitcoin holds up or just kind of consolidates here in this range and Ethereum starts to break higher and some of these alts continue, that's going to be kind of the theme, is stick with the alts, especially considering the longer term picture, right? The dailies, they've just been smashed versus Bitcoin. I mean, completely smashed. And so some of these are just seeing some very strong oversold bounces right now. Good bounces, nice tradable bounces, but in the big picture, right, the dailies and the weekly charts, I'm just treating it as that still. I'm treating it as a bounce. Not I don't want to be negative and kind of put water on the party here, but you know, just I'm booking the gains as I get them, just because I'm not 100% sold yet that they have found their lows. And I've mentioned why here, and it's ultimately back to Bitcoin. Let me zoom out. This is why I'm not 100% sold yet, right? Because of this big picture. We're still within this big pattern. We're still within this big descending triangle. Could we see another week or two of rally and into this trend line? Absolutely, right? We could still continue to see some choppy and just slowly drifting higher. But until we break out definitively, either to the upside and make a new high or break down lower, I will continue to just play it as a tradable rally, for now, right? So that's where I'm at. I'm not necessarily bearish, but I'm just not convinced that, hey, we're done and this is the start of a new longer term multi-month bull leg, right? I don't think we're there yet. Will we get there eventually? Yeah, eventually. We're not there yet, so just something to keep in mind. All right, so I'll take a look at a few charts. I want to kind of cover some of the recent names that we were watching here, because there's some good lessons learned here. You guys know, I mean, there's 100 ways to do this. You can trade on 1 hour charts, 5-minute charts, 4-hour daily charts. Everybody has kind of a different style. But most of the time I'm looking at 4-hour and 1 hour charts from a trading perspective and kind of doing that. And so I'll stick to the 4 hours for now. But I want to point out just a few names, because this just goes to show you kind of some of the challenges when it comes to trading. And so let's look at Ontology, for example, right? Ontology had this big run a couple weeks ago. And then, we were looking at this little setup here, and then it broke out and on volume. So let me pull volume back in. You can see the breakout was right here. That was kind of your initial leg higher. And here's the challenge, right? If you're waiting for the breakout, you're going, okay, this is it, unless you jump in right above this line, which would have been a fair entry, because you're also taking it as it clears this little bit of resistance right there. But here's the part I want to point out. Let me clear this here, because that was a separate trade. You had the breakout, and you had a very strong volume move. I mean, on this 4-hour candle, that's a 8% move, and then the following candle went as high as you're out 15%. Very nice to see. And then look what happens next, right? You go from 15% up to 15% up. Let me do the arrow here. It'll be easier to see, right? To you basically give up the entire move over the next day. I mean, it literally went from one extreme back down to the bottom, retested this breakout point, held the breakout point, but at that point you weren't sure, right? Was it a failed breakout? We had this big rally. You're seeing a pretty strong sell-off here. Is that it? And then you get another move higher, and then this was the continuation move, right? This was the big move that gave you, at peak to peak, 28%, right, over the course of basically 2 days, which by any market's perspective, 28% in 2 days is a fantastic trade if you can get that. So don't complain about 28% in 2 days. But the point is, you had a breakout and then you had a throwback, And so, which is why I like to take those profits initially pretty quick. So if you would have jumped on this, right? That's why you often hear me or see me post, "Hey, I'm taking partial gains or half profit or whatever." Because if it is a failed breakout, then there's two ways to manage the trade. Um, you take your initial gains quick. So if I jumped in here, for example, my stop would have been right around here. And I'm trying to remember where I got in on the second leg. There was another move higher, this ascending triangle, and I got in at 243. But if you have the initial breakout, right? So let's do the math here real quick. This is kind of just a lesson. If you go long, let's say you jumped in off after the breakout and you went long here, and you had a stop of, just down below, that translates into a 4% stop or so. And so one strategy to use, and let's make it a wider stop just for easy numbers. One strategy to use is when you're at 1% or 1R, excuse me, you take half profit, right? So let's say you're in this trade and it goes up 5%. When you're at 5%, either move your stop up or take half profit. But what you can do is if you take half off the table here and you move your stop up for the remaining portion to break even or so, what you're doing there is effectively guaranteeing a profitable trade, because now you've booked some gains and the rest of the trade is what you call a free trade, because if your stop is at break even, you're guaranteed a profit. But if you don't ever move your stop, and let's say you took half off at 5% and your stop is still at 5%, that's a free trade, because if it comes all the way back and stops you out, well, you just booked 5% gain on half the profit on half the position. And if you get stopped out at 5% on the other half, it's a wash, right? So if you take half off the table and you never move your stop, you're effectively on a free trade. At that point, you don't care what happens because it's not going to cost you anything. And if it just runs from there, then that's all just pure gains at that point. And if you get stopped out, it costs you nothing, right? So that's one strategy. The alternative is instead of it being a wash, you can take half off the table and then move your stop partially or at break even. And at that point, you're guaranteeing that you've already made a profitable trade. And so, that's just part of the trade management, the trade psychology. It's just the challenge in trading, right? You get the breakout. Is it a fake out? Is it a throwback? And the other part of that is these throwbacks make for some nice secondary entries, right? You have the breakout, the throwback. Now, generally, I don't buy the dip until I can see a continuation off the lows, right? So if it comes back and it hits the breakout point and it starts to move off that, then that's a good place to enter. At that point, you could have done that here on this candle right there, and you could have bought at the top and then keep your stop at there, and you would have been in a good trade. Where I entered was because all of this happened kind of overnight over the weekend, and so I was watching this setup, right, which made for a nice secondary entry point. And that was this big ascending triangle. So it breaks out, has a throwback, and then it just starts to really coil up. And so I was watching this, and I jumped in here. I think it was 243 or something is where I jumped on that secondary leg. And even from there, you had a pretty nice little trade. And then yesterday into the strength, I started to scale out and just basically book the gains, right? And so that's a couple of ways to do it. And, if you're making 10% in a day, then I'm not going to complain about that. So just wanted to share that because that was a good example. I think Icon had a similar way it played out. So let me go to Icon real quick. And keep in mind that during this whole thing, right, Bitcoin was basically range bound and choppy. So alt was definitely the place to be. If you look at Icon, it did something similar here. Let me clear this out. So Icon, we were looking at it right here as it was not broken out yet. And when it finally did break out, that was your entry signal there. So here was a setup. It cleared, nice volume on the breakouts, and then it had a pretty decent move off of that, right? It went up for a couple more candles. You were up about 6%, and then it totally gave it up in the following candle and went down 11% and right back to the breakout point, right? So that's always a challenge, right? Do you hold? Or do you book some gains? Or do you wait for that throwback, right? Here you would have basically waited almost an entire day. You see the breakout, 1, 2, 3, 4 candles, 4-hour candles later, so 16 hours later, you get that secondary entry point. You get kind of this this tweezer bottom on the 2-4 candles, and then it was gone after that. So you could have gone in there, jumped in on this 4-hour candle, and then you would have jumped in on a 30% move after that, right? So you didn't have to even nail the exact breakout point. And so that's just, just wanted to highlight, that's just part of the challenges with trading, where you get a lot of this fake out choppy action. And sometimes it can shake you out. So don't be afraid to jump back in. Don't jump back in too many times, right? If you're jumping in and out, you're just going to get chopped up. But it's okay to jump back in once in a while if it looks like, hey, there's the trade. So that being said, Icon is actually pulling back here a little bit, trying to set up again another potential entry point. If this continues to move this way, I'm looking at a potential ascending triangle again forming on this guy here. So you can see, the higher lows that are just kind of breaking out here. So 2 ways to play that. Considering it's already a little extended in the move, I'd rather buy the dips to the trend line like we're seeing now versus the breakouts, right? Just kind of, it gives you that little bit of extra margin on the downside. So that way, if it decides to roll over from here, your stop's tight, right? You don't have to give it much room. Versus if you buy the breakout and then that's the end of the move and it rolls over, you got to give it a wider stop. So I'd rather buy these little dips like what we're seeing right now into these patterns that are potentially forming. Maybe momentum's in favor of these guys, so definitely looking pretty good. Let's see what else you guys want to look at here. QKC, BNB, BTC, Dash, VET, Q. Okay, let's take a look at some of these here. So let me jump back to BNB. So I covered BNB Tether, and it's still just kind of forming this pattern, and I'm watching a little bit of a bull pennant right here, right? So that's kind of what I'm watching, this little symmetrical pattern that's starting to form there. As it narrows, and you can tighten that up a little bit there, but you can see the moving average is just catching up. So far it's holding up. Now if we see a big high volume break to the downside, then I'm going to get out of the way. If it continues to move higher, I'm going to add to it. So I'm in a half position right now, and I went with a half just because I'm preempting this. Now there's a reason to preempt it, right? There's a setup, there's momentum, this is a pause, moving averages here. So I'm betting on trend continuation at this point, right? I'm thinking this is a pause, and then we're going to see some trend continuation. Now I'm mindful of this resistance that's right overhead, which right now is basically 1150 or so, give or take, and up to around 1185. So this little zone is definitely going to be a little bit of a resistance zone. And so I'm looking for a push higher into this area, and then I'll start to book some gains. And if it continues higher, great. But just kind of looking at it a little bit of a quick trade. On the BNB BTC pair, this is a little bit of a pullback. Actually, let me see. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a fib level that it's touching right now. It's pretty close. And if you look at that, kind of just this impulse leg from here to the wick back down, it undercut the 50. It's sitting right above the 618 right now, so might not be a bad little pullback here. See if that entry, if this bounces, if this ties to the USD pair kind of breaking out. So definitely something to watch. The nice thing about this setup here is versus Bitcoin, if it can clear this resistance, it's got a lot of open space right above it. And I like those setups because if they get going, right, just to the resistance is not that much. It's 5%. Then above that, you can get a pretty quick pop to the upside to the next resistance level. So not a bad setup. Keep in mind, though, these are all still technically counter trend rallies, right? You're kind of going with the trend in the short run, but in the big picture, they're counter trend rallies because they're just really bouncing off of these lows. And so by definition, these counter trend rallies can be a little higher risk, lower probability, meaning you're not going to have a high ratio of winners if they start to move, but still looking pretty good all around. What was the other one here? IOTA. Let's go back to that one because that one's still looking pretty good. There you go. It's bouncing off of this. The one thing that I don't like about IOTA here, other than it's already had a nice strong move, is this big outside reversal candle on the 4 hour. I mean, it could just totally be negated if prices just bounce off this 10 EMA and technically it hasn't broken down yet. But you can see you had this on the highest volume of this move. So just be mindful of that. How does that look on Binance? Yeah, it's still high volume on Binance. So I'm mindful. Now, it doesn't always mean it's the end, right? You saw one back here, but that was more of a support bar. This one closed near the lows. And so I would just be a little bit more cautious. Doesn't mean it's not a good entry here if you bought it on dip, but play it tight, right? I wouldn't give it too much wiggle room to the downside. Right now, this just feels like it's going to be a little bit of a bounce. If this bounce fails right here around 72, 73 cents and just creates a lower high and starts to roll over, me personally, I'd get real cautious there. I'd start tightening it up. So just something to keep in mind. Let's keep going. Dash. So looking at Dash, I'm going to do Dash on BTC here. Nice setup. So this is the 30-minute. Gives you a little bit of better view of that pattern that's forming. A little bit of a, this technically an ascending triangle pattern, but you can also say it's a little bit of a bull flag. It probably looks more like a bull flag on the shorter time frames here, but very nice. So yeah, this one's definitely looking good. The 10 EMA is still down here. Maybe it just needs a little bit more time to catch up, but man, what a strong move it had yesterday. So very nice to see. Good setup there. How's it look on the USD side? Go to Kraken. It's already kind of breaking out there. All right. VET. Again, another high volume sell-off here a few hours ago. You can see that guy there coming off the highs. This one's already had a pretty good move. Let me go to the 4-hour chart. Not as big as on here on the 4-hour, so it doesn't look as dramatic there. So that's fine. How's that look there? It's basically back to the 10 EMA on that 4-hour chart. So could be a good secondary point if it holds up here. But like a lot of these, though, they're pulling back from these RSI levels that were not extreme. There was some higher than others. This one's 75 on an alts. That's strong. That's not that big of a deal. IOTA, I think, was much higher. Let me go back to IOTA real quick. Yeah, that's the other reason I was cautious here. When it had that big break on IOTA, RSI was already, high 80s, mid 80s. And so you just got to be mindful. It doesn't mean that it can't continue higher, but it's definitely longer in the tooth here, as they say. So just something to keep in mind. VET BTC here, let me go look at that. It's not bad. I mean, it's still trending higher. It's pulling right back to the moving average, and it's technically holding this higher low pattern. So, if it can reverse off of this dip, a lot of time you guys ask me, hey, what do I look for on these secondary entries? This is a good example of maybe what I'd be looking for. So I like to buy these bullish reversal candles. Once they pull back, then I start looking for that. You can either do that on a 4-hour or on a 1-hour chart. But what you want to look for is a green candle that either undercuts this by the wick and then closes higher on the body. That's a good early signal. Or that kind of 1, 2, 3 pattern on the, if the red candle's the swing low, but the green candle finishes higher, then that's what I'd look for there. So those are the type of patterns that I look for. I think, let me go back to ICX. Yesterday, yeah, so ICX was, here was the pullback we were looking at yesterday. Try to form that big reversal, but then you had this bullish engulfing. So, but that's what I look for. And then I'm also looking at, where's the, I like to use the retracement levels on the Fibonacci side. So let me pull this down. Don't need to see that much RSI. Yeah, this trend line is definitely tracking here. BTC. If we take it from the breakout point, swing high, you're right at the 382 right now, so that's good. Yeah, so I mean, if it can start to consolidate in and around here, that would be the first level. Otherwise, the 50%. This would be the best place for it to hold, just because it's still technically holding this trend line. All right, let's keep going. Let's see here, QKC. Just still marching along nicely. This one's finally coming off the lows. This was one I was watching down here at 400 sats. I just never jumped on it just because I was still cautious. It's a good pump name. It seems to really pump a lot, but you get these big sell-offs too. So I was just a little cautious, but it's moving along so far. I mean, it's not too bad. A little bit of hanging man candles if you're familiar with those. So a little bit of a red flag there. The hanging man technically confirmed with this lower one breaking below. So I'd be cautious here on this 4-hour chart. The 1 hour is probably the one to watch just because the moves are stronger on this guy. You can see here this single 1 hour candle is almost 4%. So, oh, that's that's an alert on a Forex name I was watching. And so it's kind of setting up right now. It could go either way. Is this the diamond top? Is this a symmetrical pattern? Are we going to break out of here, right? Just want to keep an eye on here. I mean, it's definitely has some momentum going for it in the big picture, but feels like it's vulnerable here. So something to watch. Let's see here. Ripple, VET, USD. Yeah, let's take a quick look at that one here. Yeah, I mean, if you want to take a bigger picture view, this 10 EMA on the 4 hour is kind of your first signal, because if it starts to break below here on a closing basis, especially, that's going to put a top in place, right? Because right now this is the most recent swing low, and it's kind of pushing higher. But if it really starts to roll over and starts to close below, especially in this current candle, which has 2 hours left, could absolutely happen, right? If you have a big red candle here, most likely the volume will be higher because this is only halfway done. So you'd have a high volume reversal. Then at that point, you could see a little bit of momentum to the downside, and maybe it'll come down a few more points. So that's the level I'd be watching. Ripple. Now, Ripple is actually looking pretty decent, or at least it was when I was watching it earlier. It has room to go. This is kind of a big outside reversal bar, but if it just sits here, then I'd be looking for that turn push higher. On the 1 hour, let's see here. Yeah, you're seeing a lot of this profit-taking type stuff right now, which is why I'm not really jumping on all of these yet. I'm not FOMOing. I'd rather wait for a good setup. Definitely watching BNB just because I've already taken a position there. I was watching Ripple for potential entry just because this has room to go, and you can see the 10 EMA is just barely catching up, and RSI is down here. So it has room to go, and the fact that it's so far only bounced into that first resistance level, if it pulls back and gives you a little bit of a handle here, this will be a nice one to be watching. So definitely keeping an eye on this one, especially with these candles relatively small, I mean, comparatively speaking. So I'm just kind of looking out for a reversal on this guy here. NIO. Now, NIO's a tough one here. It's a little choppy. It was looking like you wanted to roll over. You had this big volume push higher, but then it's pulling right back. And this one's a tough one right now. It's still technically making higher lows. So the momentum, the trend is your friend. So this might not be a bad secondary entry with your swing low most recently here kind of being your stop point, because if it rolls over now, right, it's going to start to look a little toppy here. So below 20, if you wanted to give it, to 20 even, would probably be the more conservative stop. How much is that here? Let's see. So if I jumped on it now with that big outside reversal candle we just saw, that'd be about a 3.5% stop or so. And if you wanted to play real tight, 2.5%. So not too shabby there. But for me, for it to be worth it, I got to go 2 to 1 at least on these risk rewards. And so for me to be worth it, it has to hit 22.21. Is that doable? Let's see. 22.21. Yep, 22.90 is kind of the next big overhead. 22.21 is about halfway into this next little resistance zone. So maybe it's doable, but at that point you're talking, a quick 6-7% move which, hey, it's not bad if you can make it a day trade, right? For a swing trade, maybe, right? It's not bad because if it clears $22, then you got a lot of open space. You can quickly go to 25. Let me go to the daily. Yeah, that's not bad here because you can see a quick push. That'd be the first target there around 27, 25, 27. Especially considering how far this guy has fallen. So yesterday was kind of the first day off the low from a daily candle perspective. You had that big pullback. So, yeah, not bad. I would say Neo's got a little bit of legs left. Ultimately, as you guys know, it's going to depend on what Bitcoin does. Unfortunately, but that's crypto. Let's see here. So we did Ripple, Neo. Yeah, Neo's nice. Neo should be watched here. Dash too. You just mentioned Dash. Let me go through some of the other names that I had on my list here. We covered Vet, IOTA, Ontology, BNB. Tron was moving earlier. Tron is just trending nicely, which is what I like. These hourly charts are just marching along. You see the 4-hour chart just really starting to accelerate. It is feeling a little extended, though. This feels a little climactic, this big, most recent candle we saw. So I'd probably wait for a pullback, but can't argue with that trend, man. Tron is going. Yesterday, what I was watching was this break here. It was breaking out above 23 or so, 23, 24. And not a bad little push higher since then, about 14%. And you can see it's bouncing right into this little base there. So I'd get cautious here if you're on the Tron train. Let's see here. OMG. It was looking good yesterday. It had that big move. So far, we're seeing a little bit of a pullback here. Let me see the hourlies. Little bearish divergence on this most recent push higher. So, and the thing with this guy is it does tend to have lower volume for whatever reason. You can see how choppy these bars are. So just be cautious on this one right now. It just doesn't feel like it's keeping the momentum going. You can see that one. Slight divergence. So how does it look on USD side? And it's still marching along. Not too bad. It's pulling right back to that 10 EMA right now, and made sense, right? It paused. Look where these pause. I mean, these pause like right at prior resistance, which is this is normal, right? So like this is what forms patterns. Is you get people who are buying here, endured this sell-off. You get a lot of people rallying right back into that. They know that there's going to be some sellers showing up in and around that zone, and that's very often where you start to see profit taking. And so the question is always, is it the pause and then breaks higher? Usually, yes, if there's enough bullish momentum in the market. But if not, right, then the risk is always this is a big double top and it's done. Done for now. Let's see here. Let's keep going. Syac Coin. I haven't looked at that guy in a while. Clearly lower volume name. Let me go to the daily chart. Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's trying to form a nice little low. You can call this a good Adam and Eve low. And so if you're not familiar with that, you have that sharp spike lower, and then you have kind of this rounding bottom, and you'll get confirmation when it breaks above or closes at least above this neckline there. So that's kind of the level I'd be watching, and it's getting close. It's trying to bounce here these last few days into that. Some good volumes coming in here at these lows, so not bad. It's trying. Let's see here. Did they add it on Trex? They've added a lot of names on Bittrex lately. And I haven't been trading a whole lot on Bittrex lately, so I've missed some of those recent additions. But yeah, similar pattern here. I mean, definitely looking pretty good. If it can start to, I mean, it's moving now and the volume's coming in. So not bad. On this guy here, right, if it really gets going and clears this resistance, I mean, you've got quite a bit of space left. Man, that would make for a strong move. Look at that. That's 25% just to here, and then 40% to there. Not too bad. Good find there. Okay, let's see what else here. Yeah, I saw they had NXT. They added that one a while ago. And NXT, why would they? I mean, of all names, why would they pick that one? I don't know. They have their reasonings, I'm sure. All right, let's see here. I'm going to cycle through some of these names real quick. Oh, actually, hey, Thomas. No, we didn't do Zill. We'll take a look at Zill. I know that one was moving earlier. Let me do here. So, ooh, Power had a power pivot. Oh, man, that's a double whammy. Let's go take a look at that one. So Power flashing a little bit of a low there. Let me go to the 4-hour chart. So watching that. OST's already been moving. Rads. Waves been selling off. So we got Dash. OST Komodo. Wow. Cardano 3 hours ago. 0x. Take a look at some of these here. So Cardano USD. Yeah, had that pump, a little bit of a reversal here. That was the hourly. Look at that big volume spike and then just reversed hard. That's on Bittrex. Ethereum Classic 0x. 0x is trying there. Pulled it right back to this 10 EMA, so got to see this one hold right now. This would be an ideal place for it to pause. Ethereum Classic. Let's see. Yeesh. Not participating in the party. Kind of like Ethereum here. Very similar looking chart. Let's do Zill. Zill's looking pretty good there. Man, still going. Zill. Look at that. Once it broke out from this downtrend, just has not looked back. If you're able to withstand these little pullbacks or buying on those pullbacks, just very nice. Still moving higher. Pausing right there yesterday for about a day or so, but breaking out today. So nice little secondary entry point here today on this breakout. You can see this is kind of what I was looking at there. And so it's just now breaking higher. So not bad. You know, it's a little extended here on the 1 hour, but the momentum is definitely there. So I've got this line highlighted. That's kind of the next target I was watching on Zill. So above 700, it would be where I'd start looking to get cautious or book some gains or whatever. Ethereum Classic, yeah, I don't know. That one's always hard to say just because it's a fork, and I don't know. That's a tough one. I've never really studied it in terms of Ethereum Classic to Ethereum ratios. It's been at par for most of the month, but I guess it's been outperforming since June. I wonder how much of that was just Coinbase talk. Okay, let's keep going. So we did Neo. Ooh, cloud exit on Neo, still going. F. This was yesterday and the day before, as some of these names were just really pushing through on that BTC move. OST, got to take a look at that guy. That's this little pump down here off the lows. Wow, not bad. A lot of volume coming in here. Might not be a good little. Might not be. Oh, look at the 4 hour though. Wow, RSI on the 4 hour got to 90. It's had a good move. Komodo. There's a name I haven't seen in a long time. that spike. That's probably what triggered the alert, that big spike there. Never been a fan of this one for some reason. All right. Cool. Let me pull up the Slack real quick, make sure there's not any questions that I haven't answered here. One sec. One sec here. So there was a question earlier. Am I holding anything? I wasn't at the time, but I did enter BNB shortly thereafter. Someone asked about the Forex trades. Am I going to start posting that? I'm leaning yes. We're kind of wrapping up August here, and we're going to enter a new month shortly, so I probably won't do anything until then anyway. But I kind of want to get some more feedback from you guys. I did a poll, and majority of the folks that responded to the poll were favorable to me posting non-crypto trades on there. So I'm leaning towards that direction. But I want to get some feedback, like keep it in the same channel, make it a new channel. And that's the way I'm leaning right now, is make it a new channel and just post them there. So I'm just my hesitation is in it kind of getting a little too messy, right? You know, just a little bit too much noise. Sometimes it's crypto, sometimes it's Forex. Most of the time it's those, sometimes stock, which would be rare for me right now. It's mostly been crypto trading, but if I see this setup, I'll take a stock trade or an options play of some sort. Forex would lend itself a little bit better to crypto just because it's, you know, it's pairs, you go long, you go short. And so it's just something to keep in mind. I am leaning towards a separate channel though, yeah. But the other reason I'm kind of hesitant, maybe I'll just share the setups as I'm seeing them, and just to kind of give you guys an idea what I'm looking at. But on the Forex side, sometimes it's just day trading for me, right? It's just a quick in, quick out, and it's not necessarily a swing trade. Now you certainly can. Some of the swing trades are usually pretty good, but a lot of times it's just a day trade, and it would just be hard to post those, right? Because, you know, I'm looking at it on a tick by tick basis, or, you know, on 5-minute charts or something. And if I get a decent move in one direction, I'll just close it out. So, so we'll see. I'll keep thinking through it and see where we're going to go with that. WePower. Let's take a look at WePower. Yeah, WePower's been sitting tight here. Man, yeah, that's had quite the pullback on WePower, but it's trying to find a little bit of a base here the last week and a half or so on these lows. Definitely want to watch, but I'm not seeing anything right now in terms of confirmation that it's ready to go. I mean, smaller volume name, so these moves are big if you're trading it, you know, kind of the quick in, quick out. But big picture, I'm not sure it's ready yet. See, BTC still going. Good job, BTC. Let me see here. Don't want to make Forex too trustful. Be hard to write, discuss both. Yeah. Yeah, if I'm doing fewer trades, and it'll vary, right? Like there's sometimes where crypto is busy enough where I just don't even look at the other markets, honestly. Like this week, I haven't once looked at a single stock chart this week. It's been just primarily crypto and Forex. So it'll vary by the week, and it's helpful to have kind of an alternative market when markets are doing this, right? Like we were doing a few weeks back, or even here, it was just like choppy, no trending, things were just not happening. and it was tough to do anything there. So rather than just kind of waiting around like for a week and a half, there's other things that are happening, right? So I'll keep an eye on the metals markets. I'll keep an eye on the Forex markets. And you can see here, right? You had some good trends, right? You could have shorted here, you could have gone long here, and so there's definitely been some good trends with the Forex market. Here's the Euro Yen pair. I mean, just buy the dip, right? Buy the frickin' dip. And so there's good trending markets. Here's a little bit of a double top I'm watching on the Euro New Zealand. And so, you know, when crypto's kind of just not doing its thing, it's nice to have an alternative market here. This is a double top I was looking at on the British, on the pound dollar here. So good short entry there. There you go. Another short entry I was watching on the New Zealand dollar. Looks like that's playing out. So that's good. We'll see. But, you know, these 4-hour, 1-hour charts, the thing with Forex, though, is because there's leverage involved, if you're trading 5-minute candles, you can make a ton on a day right here just doing this. Basically, I mean, if you would have taken this trade here, you're talking about, you know, 10 pips, which is not a lot, but if you're leveraged pretty well, you know, it just depends on how many lots you're buying. That 10 pips could have been a couple $100, right? So it just depends. But on the swing trade, it definitely makes for some good entries too. So we'll see. I'll definitely consider it. Okay, let's see here. Back to the crypto world. I think that's it. I kind of wanted to bring us together, see if there was any questions. Depending on how the week goes, I might do one more stream before the end of the week, wrap up the month. But hey, it's good to see BTC moving higher here. Not too bad. We'll see if it can continue higher. BNB, it's the one I'm in right now. Hopefully we get a little breakout here. It's looking pretty good all around. Has room to go too, so see if we can get that moving. All right. Okay, guys. I don't see any more. Yeah, go ahead. Let's see here. IOTA. Do I think it can continue up? I mean, I have a saying, right? Strength begets strength. So the short answer is yes, absolutely, right? There's momentum. But I would be a lot more cautious here, right? So maybe not as wide as a stop or maybe not as big of a position. Do I think it continue higher? It certainly could, especially if Bitcoin continues to go higher. How's it looking on the BTC pair? It looks great on the BTC pair. It paused just before or just right at this resistance level here. And so if it breaks higher, you could get one more leg up in this. I'd be watching for like maybe a bullish or a bearish divergence to show up. So if you see another leg higher, RSI is not confirming, they might start signaling the end of the move. But yeah, absolutely, you could get it higher. I mean, when the momentum gets going on some of these names, I mean, the surprise is often to the upside here. WAM Chain's another one to watch here. We had this pattern that broke out and it's just kind of been sitting tight here. Didn't really participate yesterday on this big move, but still looking pretty good. So I want to keep an eye on. Stratus looks really good here. That's a nice bullish engulfing candle on that 4-hour. EOS, not a bad setup there on EOS. EOS BTC. Looking pretty good. BQX still going. Bat's not doing it. Ark's not too shabby there. So Digibyte's finally pulling back. So okay, cool. All right, guys. Hey, well, thank you guys for joining. I know it's a little bit last minute here on the stream, but appreciate you being here. We'll go ahead and wrap it up for now. And if you have any more questions or charts you want to check out, go ahead and post them on Slack. See you all there. Take care.